Should you block them or not? How to deal with toxic conversations on the phone and texting. And better yet, how to train other people how you want to be treated. Hey friends, it's me, Berges, back today. And today I want to talk about dealing with those toxic conversations when it comes to toxic phone calls, toxic messages, and toxic text messages. There's a lot of videos out here on YouTube about toxic relationships, but what do we do when we have toxic conversations on our phone that get in the way of our entire day? So what do we do? How do we deal with it? Because oftentimes that communication that's coming to you from that person, comes to you on your phone, where's the phone? Probably right next to you or in your hand or in your pocket. And it's literally keeping you in a tunnel vision trying to deal with that. When you're at work and you're dealing with all this other stuff, the last thing you need to be doing is literally being engrossed and overwhelmed by toxic communication. So let's get into it right now. When we're dealing with toxic relationships, we do a lot of communication. We do a lot of fighting, we do a lot of arguing, and we do a lot of defending ourselves when it comes to texts and voicemails. And those texting and voicemail communications can become very hot and very tough and very overwhelming, and they can totally wreck the day. So oftentimes when I'm in sessions with clients, they talk about what? Blocking the communication with their ex-partner or the toxic relationship because they just are overwhelmed. And so let's talk about that. What are the reasons for blocking somebody's texts and calls? The first reason why you would choose to block is to disengage. You literally are overwhelmed with emotion, you're stressed out. Maybe there's a lot of anger coming from those texts and repeated voicemails or just repeated calls. Perhaps they're love bombing you, or perhaps they're making you feel as though you have to defend yourself. In those situations, I can understand when you really want to step back and just disengage for just a little while and try to compose yourself. What I've found is that when we literally play ball with that other person and go back and forth in communication, it's usually not good. It doesn't serve a purpose. It's not helping us positively move the ball forward in the communication. It's not allowing us to break ground and really understand the situation. Instead, it's almost like being in that fight or that argument or that same logic where everything's circular and it doesn't seem like anything's moving forward. So what are we doing? We're really just wasting time. But we're also probably devaluing our time, and we're also not feeling really good about it because nothing's coming out of it. Another reason why we choose to block a conversation is to get some peace and quiet, okay? When you have been called 50 times in the last 2 hours and you're trying to get a project done at work, 1, you're probably not being very productive. 2, the project has probably not gotten done. 3, you're getting stressed out about the project and you're getting stressed out about the numerous calls. And if you take one of those calls, you're going to have to get up and have the conversation, okay? And I've been there before too, where that the other person on the other line that's calling is going to be irate, angry, mad, fighting. And so that you're going to have to deal with this type of emotional stuff that you just don't want to deal with, okay? And so I get the fact of saying, hey, I've got to have some peace and quiet in my job for the next 8 hours. I'm going to block this person because I can't do anything about the situation at this time. And I think that's a big thing to remember sometimes, is I'm not saying to put your head in the sand, but if there's nothing you can do and you have the tendency of always wanting to jump into that conversation, even though right now nothing can be solved, turning your phone off or maybe blocking that person or silencing the phone is a good idea. The next reason why I find a lot of people want to block that person that is adding to their stress level, it's the toxic relationship, there's all these ups and downs, is to really avoid the situation. And I'm not agreeing on avoidance. I feel that the more we avoid a situation, the more we put it on the back burner. The longer we put it on the back burner, the bigger the problem gets, okay? It's like anything in life. A good example is you're getting a ticket. You're driving down the road, you get pulled over by the police officer, you're speeding, you get a ticket, right? Okay, that's bad enough. But then what happens? You wait. You wait weeks until the ticket becomes what? It becomes a warrant for your arrest, right? Then it gets to the next level. Then the financial commitment is higher. You got to hire a lawyer. You've got to jump through a lot of hoops. The same thing is kind of like this. When we step back and we block the person and we're dealing with this back and forth situation, what happens is that we're putting it on the back burner, but it escalates the emotions, right? It escalates the emotions, and it could cause a more problematic situation. But another thing that's interesting that you might not have thought about is that when we avoid this situation and block the other person, it can make us create an even worse situation and scenario in our mind. Okay? So I've done it before where I've blocked somebody because I was just so irate and so angry that they were arguing and pushing every button and literally accusing me of something I hadn't done. And I literally just was at my wit's end that I blocked them. And it was interesting. For a moment, I had a little peace and quiet. But all of a sudden, my mind began creating these crazy scenarios. Like they were saying all this stuff and screaming into the phone, and that they were going to show up at my office waiting there for me. And it was like it was making a mountain out of a molehill, okay? And so what I found is sometimes when we avoid the situation, what? Well, it makes it worse, and it makes it worse in our own head. Another reason why some of us choose to block that person is because we're so stressed out about the situation and we just don't want it to escalate. And if you are a person that's kind of dealing with some anger management issues, or you literally are that same person that gets triggered very easily, or your buttons get pushed, this might be a good thing to think about, especially in the heat of the argument. Because when we say something or we text something, we can't take it back, okay? And so if it's either saying something really horrible, something that might be very questionable, or even something that maybe they could use against you in a court of law, it's probably a good idea to block them for the meantime, not respond, cool down, calm down, take some time for yourself, and then eventually decide to unblock them and respond. I found that when we respond, when we're really stressed out, we say the absolute wrong thing. Even if they're to blame too, you always want to take the high ground. And you don't ever want them to use a communication that you've used against you. And I found that sometimes in the heat of the argument, we can say and text a lot of bad things. And so in that case, blocking somebody is probably effective for your own peace of mind, but also so eventually when you do decide to comment, you say something that's right and genuine and something that can't be used against you. So now I've kind of listed the reasons why you might want to choose blocking somebody, especially in the heat of the moment. So why should we not block somebody? You got to look at both sides, right? The first reason why you don't want to block someone is you want to deal with the situation head on. Sometimes dealing with the situation as it comes is the best time to deal with it because what? You're not procrastinating, you're not putting it off, and you're not making it bigger in your head than it already is. I get stressed out when I put things off. I really do, because I make them so much more huge and big, and I get stressed out about it, okay? And so oftentimes what I like to do is instead of blocking somebody, I'll literally turn my phone off for a few minutes, maybe even an hour. If I'm at work, I'll take a break outside, take a quick walk and kind of think about it, clear my mind, and then respond, okay? Because I want to do it when it's fresh in my mind, but I also want to do it when I'm not stressed out about the fact that I've waited too long to communicate or things seem to have gotten out of hand. Another reason why people choose not to block is because, well, for some strange reason, we're addicted to proving that we're right. We're addicted to defending ourselves, going down that rabbit hole, okay, to try to explain how we were right and defending ourselves. But why do we keep defending ourselves with something we didn't do? Many of you are involved in toxic relationships where the person is accusing you of anything under the sun, anything and everything. And instead of just ignoring it or moving on, you defend yourself in every single account, causing more of a conversation, more of an argument, and giving them more to play with. It's like you're allowing them to go fishing on a huge fishing expedition. Every single text you send, they use more of that information, turn it around on you, and it makes you angrier and angrier and angrier. And literally you're at your wit's end, okay? And so in that situation, if you're going there defending yourself like that and really angry and upset, you either got to turn the phone off or block that person, because right now you're not doing yourself any good. You're not using your time wisely, And you're also stressing out quite a bit, and that's causing your heart rate to go up. It's causing you to probably panic a little bit, and it's probably causing you some acute anxiety that's not going to help you health-wise and not going to help you mentally. Another reason why some of you choose not to block or turn the phone off is because you just can't stop reading those texts. It's like you can't stop. You're looking at the next one and the next one, and it's like, what's going to happen next? And you're so ingrained in the drama. You've gotten so connected to this because of the toxicity in the relationship as well as the codependency that you continue to read the text after text after text. And unfortunately, what does that mean? They have you exactly where they want you, at their beck and call, reading their abusive, emotionally abusive messages that's only doing what? Cutting you down to size, making you feel small, making you feel powerless, and making you feel just horrible and hopeless. So in that situation, when you catch yourself reading those text messages that are just so horrible, either block that person for a little while or turn that phone off. Because when you're just looking at that, you're not adding to your quality of life, and you might actually respond back with something, well, maybe you shouldn't respond back with. Another reason why we choose not to block, and this is one that I definitely agree with, you're married and you're trying to save the marriage. Okay. When you're married and you've been in a marriage for a long time and there's a lot of toxicity or a lot of anger, I understand the value of trying to save the relationship. And so I don't agree with blocking your spouse in this situation. However, sometimes marriages can be extremely toxic. Could have been toxic since the beginning of the relationship. And so you need to really think about, how should you respond? How should you respond effectively? But better yet, is there some changes to your protocol that could benefit the marriage as a whole? And that's what I want to talk about now. Now, you don't have to be married to benefit from this information. You could just be in a relationship. It could actually just be a friend or a coworker, because this information applies to any relationship that you have with another human. So we're here, we're dealing with the toxicity, we're getting these texts, we're getting these calls, we're getting these messages, the repeat calling. So how do we change the situation? Okay, we've tried blocking, we tried not blocking, we tried turning off the phone, we tried taking a walk, we tried to really think and clear our minds. So what do we do next? Okay, well, there's a long-term solution to this problem that's a little different from what we just talked about. And it's about training the other person how you want to be treated. Interesting, novel idea. Very interesting. I could actually train the other person and show them how I want to be treated by the way I act and how I respond. It's similar to like playing a tennis game, right? So you're on one side of the court and they're on the other side of the court, and there's a net in between, and so you're hitting the tennis ball with the racket back and forth, and they're going back and forth, and all of a sudden they hit the ball and you catch it in your hand and you put it down on the ground and you turn around and you walk away and you say, that was fun, I'll see you later. Well, that's a quick way to show somebody that you don't want to continue this game. Much like you can stop a conversation or a text message. Okay, so let's talk about that, because you don't always have to, the proverbial ball into their court. You can sometimes, put the ball down. You can sometimes decide that you don't want to play at all. It's up to you. Novel idea, because a lot of times we forget that fact. We get overwhelmed by the anger and resentment that we have about them trying to push our buttons or making us feel defensive or literally defenseless, that we respond back, we attack back, we get angry, we pick up the phone, we call and call, they don't answer the phone, and all of a sudden, guess what? We're playing by their rules. Okay, so let's talk about it. How do you train someone else how you want to be treated when it comes to texting and calling and our way of communication and technology these days? The first thing that you can do, and this is a huge thing, is to stop defending yourself when it wasn't your fault in the first place. You can stop defending yourself. If you didn't do anything wrong and they keep texting you and calling about something that you supposedly did wrong and they're just blaming you for something you didn't do, why do you keep responding back to that? It's time to end that conversation. And the way that I train somebody in that situation is I don't respond. Okay, if you're going to threaten me or tell me that I did something that I didn't do, and you're going to keep pushing me down and making me feel bad about that, and you're basically, you're making me feel bad about something I didn't do, but even more so, this is defamation of character. Okay, I'm not going to respond because what you're saying holds no ground and holds no water. Okay, so when you're responding, you're giving into them, you're giving credence to their conversation. When you don't respond, you're letting them know, you know what you're saying is bullshit. The second way that you can train them is by ending the blame game. It's time to end the blame game. When somebody is blaming you for every single problem in their life and it's not your fault, don't continue to chime in. Okay, this is a toxic conversation. This is someone that doesn't want to take responsibility for anything in their life, doesn't want to take responsibility for their actions at all, and wants to blame you for everything that's happened into their life that they see as a negative situation. That is a no-brainer. You want to end that conversation, not even communicate on that conversation. Because if someone's not taking responsibility for their own actions, why do you want to waste your precious time defending yourself and also trying to get them to see the light when it's obvious that they haven't and they're living in their own world? Okay? And in that situation, what I found is that no matter how much light you shine on the conversation, they don't want to see the truth anyway. Okay? Because if they did want to see the truth, they would know that they're responsible for their actions, that you didn't push them into anything, and better yet, that they actually need to take control of their life and stop putting you to blame for the stuff that they've caused in their own life. The next way that you can train them, and this is a big one, is to stop giving them all the power. In toxic relationships, especially when we're being manipulated, we begin to give them all the power. We feel as though they're in charge because they've told us they're in charge. Literally, we're panicked. We feel as though, well, we have to do whatever they want us to do. We're trying to calm them down. Oftentimes, we're walking on eggshells. And as we walk on eggshells for a very long time, we tend to do whatever they want us to do so that we don't cause them to be angry or upset. Okay? Wow. When we do that, what happens is we give them our power. We literally hand it over like in an Easter egg basket. Here's my power. Here you go, take it. No worries. As long as this makes you happy, I'm just going to step back. And anytime you text me or call me, I'll respond right back. I don't want you waiting for more than a couple of seconds for my response. BS. Stop giving them your power. If you don't want to respond and you don't feel like responding, if you're under attack, if they're attacking you emotionally and mentally, do not give them that power. Pull it away. You know how often and how interesting this is when you're dealing with a toxic relationship. They're probably going to come at you like a steamroller and keep calling you and texting you and love bombing you and everything in between. Turn that phone off, okay? Because right now, even though it might be stressful, you're regaining your power. Another thing that you can do to train them is to stop allowing them to rule the conversation. It's a two-way street, okay? Life is a two-way deal. There's two people involved and two people need to be respected. I'll tell you one thing, when I'm not being respected by somebody else, I'm not continuing the conversation, and I'm not going to allow them to rule the conversation either. We all are allowed to have our own opinions and thoughts, and a lot of times when we allow them to rule the conversation, it's like, well, they're in the power position, and you know, quite honestly, we all have value. You're a valuable person too. Your information, your perspective is important to you, and if they're ruling the conversation and not listening to you at all, you really got to step back and analyze that and think about it, because you are valuable, but when you let them rule over you, you're actually kind of giving them your value, and you're showing them that you also devaluing yourself. And so remember that you're an adult, they're an adult. It's a two-way street. Don't allow them to walk all over you, because you have rights too. Another thing to think about, and another way to train people the way you want to be treated, is to remember, if you're in control, act like you are. Okay? It's a big deal. It's amazing how when we act like we're in control, all of a sudden other people realize we're in control. What does that mean? That means that I am only going to communicate when I want to communicate. And I'm not talking about communicating like in a narcissistic way. I'm saying that if I'm in the line of fire and I'm being assaulted on text, I'm not going to respond at that situation. I'm going to wait and think about it. If I'm dealing with a toxic relationship like that, I'm not going to give them the power. I'm not just going to go on and respond right then. I'm going to wait. I'm going to take my time. I'm going to be strategic. Okay? I might not decide to respond back for several hours because I don't know exactly how to respond, but the big deal is this. I'm an adult, I have value, and I know it. And I know that my perspective matters. And even though they might be coming at me and bombarding me with texts and calls, I might shut that phone off because, you know what? I am in control of my own life, and I'm not going to let somebody bully me or push me into communicating with them, especially when they're angry, mad, or yelling. I'm just not going to do it because you know what? I'm in control of my own destiny. And last but not least, and this is the big kahuna, this is the big one, this is the wada size way of training other people how you want to be treated. You don't have to respond. You just don't. Don't forget this. This is the golden rule of texting and calling. You don't have to respond. When somebody sends you something, especially if it's a toxic message, it's an angry message, it's an argumentative message, think about it. You don't have to. That's the coolest thing about this, is that don't let somebody bully you into responding. Don't let them make you get so angry that you go crazy on the texting, or you're calling or picking up the phone and dialing over and over again and they're not answering the phone. Sitting back and realizing, wait a second. When you begin to realize that we hold all the cards, we then begin to realize that we're in control. Oftentimes in many toxic relationships, because we've been so heavily manipulated, because we've had to walk on eggshells because we want to keep the peace, what happens is we forget that we actually don't have to do it. And because we've given our power over so many times, we forget that we're actually powerful. And so this small little golden rule goes a long way, that you don't have to respond. Makes you realize again that you've been handing over your cards so long that you've forgotten about it. So stepping back and analyzing, seeing the fury on the text messaging, you might actually get a chuckle by looking at it, because you may begin to not take it so seriously when you realize, one, you don't have to respond, and two, how absurd it really is. I guess it comes down to how much drama we're willing to deal with in our lives, what adds to our quality of life, and what we just won't deal with anymore. I hope that this video has helped you. If you haven't already, please subscribe to my channel. And for anybody that you know that's dealing with this situation in a toxic relationship or a toxic friendship, please share this video with them. And also in the comment section below, I would like to hear from you some of the ways that you've overcome these toxic conversations, but better yet, some of the tips and tricks that you do to not escalate things and to keep your blood pressure relatively low. Thank you for watching this video, and don't forget to continue to live your true life.